That was a great introduction, and
You have to speak up. Speak up because I didn't make this work, so you have to speak up.
okay. Thank you. And I guess in honor of that, I should add that I've also been doing a Women in Robotics group, which is why robots are appealing for me, because robotics really is the 21st century technology, and yet I find that I go to conferences and there are fewer than 5% women. And this has been going on for quite a long time. It's one of the fields of computer science, engineering, and finance that has been quite resistant to diversity. And I personally found that a very good reason to get heavily involved in robotics and see if I could do something about it. And that's got nothing to do with my presentation, aside from maybe in a more metaphysical fashion. We can discuss this after. I'm talking about robots, embodied physical systems, and I think that's really apt because the speaker after me is going to be talking about intelligence. And I just want to be very clear, robots, not bots, which are automation and chat. This is about the physical robots, and most specifically, humanoids. Because right now, I would say that a humanoid robot is not a good robot. And that's a shame, because we've been dreaming about humanoid robots for thousands of years. They're full of stories, and not just stories, but actual working models going back 2,000 years to the Greeks and the Chinese, where they were building early automata. And for example, Leonardo da Vinci had a working knight as one of his devices. And in the early 20th century, Nikola Tesla said, it's a done deal. It's going to happen. Honestly, I've built robots myself. They're not that difficult. There's absolutely no reason why the 21st century will not be full of them. And that will take the place that slaves occupied in ancient civilizations and free humans for higher aspirations. He was an optimist until he invented his death ray and then decided to keep it from the rest of the world because he just didn't trust us that much. And that's kind of how I feel about humanoid robots. Are they really the best for us? Even though we've aspired to having humanoid slaves for such a long time. This is Electro and Sparky, and they were built for the World's Fair in 1936, I believe. Now, they were built to advertise household appliances. The robot didn't do any housework. Okay? He was nowhere near as useful as a robot vacuum cleaner. Basically, what he did, has anybody seen these robots? He smoked. And he sang. He was a charismatic entertainer. Not much good around the house. And this is where we go when we talk about humanoid robots. That's the bad robot that most of us think about, not Electro. But the killer robots of our science fiction are really just the tip of the iceberg that we have to worry about with robots. Now, I'm not saying we don't have to worry about them. We are building autonomous killing machines. But there are groups bringing this to the United Nations and formulating ethical guidelines and trying to create global laws about autonomous killing machines. Okay? That is a comparatively clear-cut bad robot. What really concerns me is all the rest of the ordinarily bad robots, all the electros, as it were. So, of course, a killer robot is a bad robot. That is my first law of robotics. And is anyone familiar with Isaac Asimov's laws of robotics? Okay. The first law was that a robot may not injure a human being. So far we're on the same page. A robot must obey orders given to it by a human. And a robot must protect itself as long as that doesn't contradict with the first or the second law. You may be aware that he actually had 4 laws, and the 4th law he called some people call the zero law, was that a robot must not endanger humanity. Not just one human, but humanity in general. Now, if you think that through, that pretty much cripples robotics completely. Okay? And I would argue that Asimov's laws of robotics were simply like a student debate. It was fun. It got us talking about robots and what our aspirations and hopes and fears were, but they were completely unworkable. And every single story that Asimov wrote about the laws of robotics pointed out why they didn't work. Okay? If you've read those stories. But we have this notion still that we can take laws and apply them to robotics. I think no, but what we can do is we can take design guidelines, and I think that's a far more pragmatic approach. So my second law, or design guideline for robotics, is that good robots obey the law. And that seems a bit Asimov-y, but when you think about it, what does that law constitute? It's a set of codes, and it differs from state to state, from country to country. And a lot of it is very mundane, and it relates to the third law, which is robots are products. And this is just a little example: industrial robots, service robots, consumer robots. We've probably all seen robots like this. We may have seen robots like this, but there's a bit of an avalanche of robotics coming, and they take a range of different shapes, and we're going to be seeing them in all sorts of areas of our lives. And it becomes very important that they act like good products and obey all the appropriate laws. And when you think about it, that displaces the idea that we can put in a couple of very simple top-down ethical guidelines saying, do not injure, do not harm, or what have you. It comes down to, is your clearance sufficient for moving in this environment, and are you totally able to detect a person walking in front of you? Are you going to live up to your product lifetime? Are you reliable? All of these things that we would expect a car or a vacuum cleaner to do. Are you taking pictures and sharing them on the internet without your owner's knowledge? Okay. Drones themselves are not a privacy problem, for example. Cameras being misused by people who own drones is where the privacy problem comes in, and you don't need a law against drones. You need to be able to enforce the privacy law that already exists to protect people under certain circumstances from having their pictures taken. So a lot of robotics is hitting some of these commercial roadblocks even as we speak now. And is anyone familiar with Jibo, the social robot from Cynthia Brazil's MIT lab? Wonderful Kickstarter, very successful. I've been waiting for my Jibo for over 2 years now. And the release has been delayed again. But even worse, the release has been ixed for anybody outside of the US and Canada. Why? Because they discovered that Jibo really broke too many laws. Okay? And, you know, commercial uptake of drones in the US was hampered for quite a long time while people tried to work out what the regulatory framework needed to be around it. Robots as products. These are great robot products. They're safely away in the factory, we hardly ever see them, and there are very, very robust standards governing their existence. The next sort of robots we have are these. And this is interesting because they already are on our roads. But there's an incremental rollout in most instances. Tesla perhaps not so, but most automakers are going very slowly, step at a time, trying to solve the problems. Because these robots, they're killer robots, but we call them cars. We don't usually call this either a car or a killer robot, but it is a robot just as much as any of the others. The thing is, All of the mechanisms are hidden inside the box. Our houses and our businesses are already full of robots, but we don't tend to think of it that way because this is what we expect a robot to look like. We do expect it to have a head and arms and a body and to talk or to interact with us. The humanoid robot. And I think that this is a great distraction. Why should we even try to have a humanoid robot? Well, the most recent DARPA Robotics Challenge was specifically for a humanoid type robot. And the reason for that was to do disaster relief in human environments. There's a very clear-cut reason. The robots had to be able to, I'll just go back there, they had to be able to drive a car. They had to be able to open doors. They had to be able to climb steps or ladders. They had to be able to utilize power tools and turn off pressure valves and climb over rubble, do all the sorts of things that robots needed to do in the aftermath of the Fukushima disaster, when 24 hours, if the nuclear plant had been able to be shut down, the entire meltdown could have been avoided. It may have been less than 24 hours, but people were not able to get in. None of the state-of-the-art robots in the world would have been able to get in. But this challenge brought forward the development of robots that could be used in disaster relief situations, and they were specifically designed to operate human tools in a human environment. But if we just go back and have a look, not everybody went for a human-like humanoid. In fact, some of the most successful teams, like Robotics from NASA JPL and where is Chimp from Carnegie Mellon and Team Keist. Oh, they're a little harder to see, but these were wheeled robots that could extend themselves into an upright position, but tended to do most of their operations drop down like a mobile base with a half-sized humanoid. And if anyone's seen pictures of NASA Robomode on the space station, the top half is humanoid, and the bottom half can fit on a crane. Or nothing, which is quite bizarre looking. So there's a reason for these trying to be humanoid, but I should say these are the state of the art in robotics. And this was what we, I don't know if I can play a video of this. But I shall just say, did anybody watch any of the DARPA Robotics Challenge? This was the state of the art in robotics. I loved it, I thought it was fantastic. But the video that was shared around the world and went viral was this one. If I can play. The most famous quote from this challenge was, "We don't need to worry about the robo-apocalypse, we just need to close our doors." So in many ways, this was a great PR success, actually, for DARPA and for robotics generally, because it reminded us just how rudimentary our most
Can't hear you.
sophisticated
I can't hear you.
It was a great PR success, really, because it reminded us how rudimentary robotics were. And it changed a lot of the media expectations. But I'm watching a huge hype cycle building up again. And one of the things I would like to do is remind us just how much not to expect from humanoid robots. Why? Most deeply, I'm concerned about this, the ability of robots to manipulate us. And you think, how is this going to manipulate me? It's a new collaborative robot, which means it can work alongside people, which is great. This is the same sort of robot, but it has a face. The reality is, the moment we put 2 dots on a stone, we attribute personality and agency to it. And this is being well known by illustrators and advertisers for a very long time. But now we have a whole set of new, far more sophisticated products in our lives. And I'm just going to leap over that video. And they can be designed to have something that persuades us that they have some sort of agency and some sort of relationship to us. And they're going to be coming into every aspect of our lives. Now, automobile manufacturers have already been designing faces onto their cars to create relationships with us. That's a very subtle form. But once they start talking to us, these robots, it begs a lot of questions. Robots are rolling out into our retail, into our shops, into our hospitality, our hotels, into our healthcare. And they're all using that ability to create a relationship with us. On one hand, it's really exciting, but on the other hand, I do think that we need to pay a lot of attention to the ability of robots to manipulate us emotionally. And the advertising industry is a little bit slow to work this out, but it's not going to take them long. And this is the fine design principle or law of robotics, which seems quite self-evident, but it raises an interesting question. Who owns that robot? We're interacting with it in a shop. How does it make clear who is responsible for the behavior of that robot and the data that that robot collects? We're going to run into a lot of problems in the next 30 years. The automobile did not launch fully fledged onto a highway system in the early 1900s. There was 30 years of chaos while we worked out things like traffic lights. We're just at the start of a very interesting period in robotics. And it is definitely going to be the technology of the 21st century. It is going to change the world. But let's start thinking about some of the traffic rules that we need to have for the new robot revolution. These little toys are just one aspect of robotics. It's scary when we think about robots as large devices that shuttle people around or that have emotional relationships with us. And finally, humanoid robots. That rule about we should know who owns the robot, think about what Nikola Tesla said. He looked forward to the robot revolution where they would take the place of slaves. And think about what I've said about how all we need to do is put a hint of a face on something and we create a relationship with it. It's just a hunk of plastic. We can take a baseball bat to it if we choose, and we do not hurt anything, but we've created a relationship. First off, a slave-owning relationship. Is that good for us, period? And second off, a relationship in which we get used to being able to damage, destroy, or hurt objects. What are the ongoing emotional impacts for humans? And this is where I think we need to be very careful about humanoid robots in our society and develop clear guidelines or clear indicators in the robots that move among us more and more as to what they are, how they're going to behave, and how we need to behave towards them. It really does make a difference. And how is that going to affect us? There is some evidence to say it will. And there's a lot of movies to talk about the different ways that might happen. We'll just leap straight out of there. Another great quote, Norbert Wiener, who was the father of cybernetics, he said, "We mustn't look to the future as a comfortable hammock that we can relax in and be waited on by our robot slaves. He said, the future is going to be an ever more demanding struggle against our limitations, the limitations of human intelligence. But for all of that, we have a wonderful opportunity to address, with robotics, the global grand challenges facing us. We will need robots to increase our food production, which must double in this next generation. And we can't double the land that we grow food on. But with robotics, we can double the food production on the land that we have, and we can lower the impact. That's just one of the areas that I do think robotics is going to be fantastic for. Elder care, energy, space exploration. I'm looking forward to robots changing our lives for the better, and I want to make sure that they're changing our lives for the better, not the worse. Thank you.